on this computer, do that live thing where I say, go live. And we're preparing to live stream, setting up your meeting for custom streaming service. Sounds so important.
Let's see. Wait for the notification. Notifications. Come on.
There we go. I just hit go live. So hopefully we should be soon live and broadcasting to our friends all around the world, or mainly Indiana, I'm guessing.
Come on.
It says we're live on my end. But who knows? Who knows these things?
We're live on Facebook?
Excellent, hey?
Oh, no, I mean, I'm asking. I'm like...
I think so. I mean, we're maybe just talking. It says connecting live video.
Oh, my gosh.
If only one of us worked in IT.
I mean, it says we're there. Yeah, here we go.
All right.
Yep, we're there. We're there.
Tremendous. Well, hello again, everybody. It's Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, and it's time for the Evan and Aaron show. I'm Aaron, and this is...
And I'm Evan, and we're glad you guys are here. Aaron, I got to be honest with you, man. Sorts tonight. Got a big announcement today that I actually got accepted into the doctoral program that I wanted to get into. So I will be
outstanding, my friend.
Up all kinds of debt, and it'll be awesome.
Well, cheers to that right off the bat. Welcome everybody, and welcome to that great news for Evan. That's tremendous.
Yes. Yeah. I would have showed the label, and I'm the label because they haven't sent us any money yet. So there you go. Yeah, I know. Anyway, right. What do we got on the show tonight, Aaron? What are we going to lead off with, bud?
The first thing I want to talk about in one of the reasons we started this, and by the way, Evan, this is episode 10, which means we've been doing this for 10 weeks, and I think we thought about it a couple weeks into it. So what are we 3 months into this weird pandemic that has really changed lives, changed the economy, changed the way we see things. So congrats on 10. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope to keep it going after this whole damn thing is over and we can be around each other a lot more often.
They said we wouldn't make it this far, man. I mean,
right.
You know.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Love is all we need, I guess. I don't know.
But I do think it's important to continue talking about what's going on with coronavirus. Oh, yeah. It's still been a danger. Indiana is considered stable, but if you look at several maps, there's a lot of places that weren't at the guidelines for reopening, went ahead and reopened, and now are beginning to see some spikes. There's no joy in saying those statistics. I'm sad for a lot of people. It makes me sad that more people won't take this as seriously as need to, because really we know now, and I know there was a lot of conflicting guidance for a while, but we know now, how important having masks on is for one another's health. It's a really, really basic gesture, I think, when you go out in public. And it just says we all are in this together. I don't really think it needs to be taken to the level it has been at some point. But the fact is it's out there, it's going on, and it's going to harm more people. We've got to get more testing. Hopefully these, like you mentioned before the show, some new treatments that might help slow it down.
Although if we don't test, it'll be okay. I mean, as many cases.
That's sorry. A sad logical fallacy. I just don't. I mean, technically, I guess it's true, but it's a really frustrating way of looking at things, and it just shows you what, yet again, just a lack of thought and leadership at the highest levels, and it's just not even worth talking about at this point. But keep looking at your statistics, people. Johns Hopkins is a really good place to go if you're not into the whole CDC WHO thing for whatever reason. But John Hopkins is doing a great job. And I believe that was like a 17-year-old kid that came up with one of the best aggregators for all the information. He's got an app for it. So check that out. I mean, the information's out there and you do what you want with it. But I don't think anybody wants to get sick anytime soon. So that's my wrap on that. I've got a couple different things that we can go with. I think it's important for us to talk about what it means to defund the police. And I think we need to, talk about, how the system itself actually undermines the good police that are out there. And I think it's also important to talk about Juneteenth, which is coming up in 2 days on Friday, and anything that's going on around the city to celebrate it, and maybe fill some people in who may not know what it's about. So I'm happy to start with any of those because that's what we would do at the bar. We would just be like, hey, I want to talk about this. You want to talk about this? So if something catches your fancy, man, let's jump right into it.
Well, I obviously I want to jump into the defunding of the police piece there. And once again, I know how much of a buzzword that is, defund the police. And we've talked about this before, Aaron, and I believe that people have posted about this and we've discussed this over and over again. It's not about defunding, guys. It's about demilitarizing and realizing that, number one, and this is just my opinion, number one, the police force is a civilian force. It's not it's not a military force at all. And so for it to look military force makes it look and feel like, especially for people of color, an occupying force in their neighborhoods. And so therefore, it's already sitting people at odds or making people at odds with each other, the police force and the common, the public, in the fact that, the police force and I made this statement I think last week I made this statement, and it was amazing to me to go back and just to search a small little hometown area. Why do we have a militarized SWAT team in my little 600-person hometown? I don't understand that. Yeah. I don't understand, the fact that we need people out there who understand who people are as far as their, possible mental health issues, as far as, socioeconomic issues, just being able to talk to people. We need people who are trained, who are really, in the sense of the word, social workers. People who are able to keep the peace, because we went from being peace officers to police. And the distinction, but it's interwoven, Aaron, and you know this, the whole duty of a police officer started way back. I mean, back in the 1600s, when we were bringing people over Africa, when we established a police force. Who were the ones that went after the runaway slaves? It wasn't the land, it wasn't the owners, it was the police. They were commissioned to go after the slaves. Who were the ones that were to uphold the Jim Crow laws that went into effect after, slavery? Yeah. The police. And so people want, well, my goodness, why are Black communities so, angry and scared of the police? Well, it's because that the police have been at the center of establishing the institutional racism that we have today in America. And the fact is that we talk about the all cops, some cops type thing. Don't look at the individual. I look at the system in which they're in. And the system in which they're in tells them that they need to be trained like military soldiers, and they need to be warriors instead of peace officers. That's my beef with it. And that's what I think, as far as defunding the police means. It's not saying to put people out of their job or take money away from protecting us. They're supposed to be protectors, not soldiers. And so that's what defunding the police means, is demilitarizing the police, training them to be very, very good as far as community relations. And like I said, in the purest sense of the word, social workers, people who work with society in order to make it better. That's what I think.
I agree with a ton of that. I actually, first off, I think there's some there's a brief discussion to be had about the phrase defund the police, because when you ask that question and it gets explained, it does mean something slightly different for various communities. I think on a macro level, it does mean a lot what you're saying. Let's de-escalate and demilitarize the stance and the culture of policing. But I think there are ways to really tailor it to specific communities. And for some places, defunding the police may mean disbanding a significant portion of their police force because they no longer see it has the value it is serving the community. That may work in some places and not as well in others. You know, we're seeing this sort of sit-in, this takeover in Seattle, and thus far it's been mostly peaceful, despite how it's trying to be portrayed by others. But it's a beautiful idea, and we've seen things like this pop up in different places around the world. There's Christianity in Denmark. That's a famous, you know, political and cultural and artistic community that largely, you know, self-controlled, self-leading. And they're left alone by the government. But I don't think it's a long-term solution for the United States as a whole, because there are truths that we have to address. And some of those truths are people are going to break the law, and we do need some type of police force. But again, it's largely what we expect them to do, what we ask them to do, and what we train them to do. And, you know, we don't train them well enough to begin with. It's an underfunded service as it is. So the term defund the police makes people, I mean, we defund education all the time. And teachers suffer for that when we're trying to hold them accountable for whatever reason. But it's the same sort of thing here. We're talking about is reallocating the resources and putting them where we think they need to be. I don't know that police officers should be responding to all the variety of calls that they do because of the type of the training that they get. You know, and they get several hours of, you know, probably some sort of hand-to-hand combat training and defensive training and quick ways to, you know, eliminate a physical situation, and obviously handgun training. But then they become officers, and they're not like soldiers are. They're not constantly training for these particular missions. They're out doing a particular type of job, and we're asking them to do too many things. So when they encounter some of these situations, there is a panic. You know, I was watching a show earlier, and a Navy SEAL was talking about how hard they train. They train for 18 months for a 6-month deployment. And they practice things over and over and over again with the specificity of what they believe they're going to encounter. Now, if you've gotten a few hours, you know, 100 hours or so of training on a variety of things, 10 hours of de-escalation training, 10 hours of, you know, how to deal with a mentally ill person, 10 hours of substance abuse training, 10, you know, a variety of things. It's not enough. It doesn't ultimately prepare you, and you're not practicing over on we need to change the culture of policing, how police are trained, and how we go about deploying those police, because there are so many of these encounters that you have to ask yourself, there's why in any way should a man who was selling loose cigarettes on a sidewalk be dead? How is a man who was asleep in his car dead? And everybody wants to focus on, oh, well, this person fought back, that person fought back. And it completely misses the point of what is supposed to be happening. And I don't, you know, I don't want to go down every rabbit hole and the you know, what happened in Atlanta that we saw on video, what we saw in just out, I can't remember the name of the town now, but it's just outside of Ferguson with the officer hitting somebody. I mean, there's so much going on right now, and everybody wants to immediately focus on, well, what did they do? And it's kind of like well, what was she wearing?
Yes,
kind of
absolutely.
And
absolutely.
And as a little aside, you know, I saw this the other day, and, you know, take a meme as you will, but it seems like anytime a black man gets, you know, in this situation caught committing a crime, immediately the narrative is, what has he done in the past?
Sure.
But when a white kid gets caught raping a girl on a college campus, it's all about, oh, what's the future? What's he going to miss out on? What potential is he not going to fulfill?
Yeah.
And it's a really, really constant distinction. There's always a picture of a black kid holding a gun in a pose on the internet from his Facebook page, and then the white kid who killed somebody is in a suit and tie. And it's again systemic bias. I don't know. That was definitely a little aside, but it's just a frustrating thing. And to get back to the point, I think defund the police means reform the police, and in whatever way, shape, or form that needs to take place in your specific community, because some people dealing with issues in Detroit are not the same as people dealing with what's going on in rural Alabama. And I can acknowledge that. But neither of those police forces should spend the majority of their time looking like they're the military. And I think that's where you and I really are intersecting on this. And we've just witnessed too many videos of guys in full gear firing tear gas, which isn't even allowed in international battle, by the way, on our own citizens. And if you aren't first appalled by seeing the smoke before you say, but what were they doing?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, man. Go ahead.
No, I would be remiss if I mentioned that 5 years ago today, Dylan Roof walked into a black church and massacred parishioners. And when you look at that, and you look at the tragedy that was, and you look at the pictures, and I want you to think about this, Aaron, and everybody else. I want you to think about this. They escorted this guy to the car after he shot everybody at a Wednesday night prayer meeting. Killed him in cold blood. Escorted him to the car. The guy said he was hungry. Drove the guy through a Burger King to get him something to eat. When they went to the jail, it was a picture of an officer who was, just totally caring for this sickened and crazy individual. Now I want you to think about the entire black community seeing that. Yeah. Seeing this person being let out and given these special privileges. Mm-hmm. And then I want you to think about what happened in Atlanta last week. Guy was drunk. I don't know too many people who are drunk who get into it with the police who aren't belligerent at one time or another. I don't know too many people who are, drunk and was driving. He's going to say some things. He's going to do some things. But I don't know too many, people who were picked up for OWI who were shot in the back dead right now. Yeah. So, while we look at this reform and while we demilitarization, we also cannot continue to listen to the narrative that, this is about police reform. No, this is also about race. It is very much about race. And I know that's not what you're saying, Aaron. I've seen that on Facebook this past week. Oh, well, see, it's just about the police officer. You don't know that he's or not. I'm like, bro, come on. I mean, it does not take a rocket scientist to figure out that when it comes to confronting a white offender, black offender, most police officers, now I said most, that could be 50% to 99%. But I'm willing to say most police officers will feel a heightened level of concern dealing with a person of color, especially a black man, as a white man, whenever they're dealing with apprehending criminal. I'm convinced of that. And it's not me just saying that. There's visual evidence of it.
Well, and it speaks to a deep-seated, just sort of historical, racist, stereotypical fear.
That's it.
That has always existed. You start talking about a lot of this, and I think certain people tune out because it's the same type of phrasing over and over again, but there's definitely this white fragility in the face of Black masculinity. And I would say the only thing a white man fears on the same level of being alone and feeling threatened by a Black man is the thought of a Black man with his white woman. And so many historical events. I mean, look at nearly every one of, you look at race riots and race massacres in the history of this country, Tulsa, Atlanta on more than one occasion.
Yes.
All the stories start with apparently a Black teenager had the audacity to speak to a white woman. And in how many of these stories after the fact do we find out it didn't happen? The Emmett Till story comes to mind.
Now, oh my God. That's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
The history is a culture of trumped up charges against people in order to do violence, to perpetrate violence, specifically against a culture. It is on some level, you understand it. The white people stole Black people from Africa and brought them to a place that they didn't want to go to and weren't wanted other than for their ability to build. So the fact that there's still animosity truly isn't surprising. It's the white silence in the face of that. It's the complicitness in not recognizing the value of one culture and the ignorance of what is unfortunately a pretty loud vocal group of people.
Yeah. Yep. You're right. Let's see. Oh, there's a good question. I think we should do our halftime shot. Do you think that comes from years of knowing how they abused the Black man and fear that he would retaliate? I think she was talking about, hey, what you were, Aaron, as far as, what's the fear? What brings that fear factor for the white community when it comes to Black men, especially? That's a great thought. I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do our halftime shot, and we will address that if you want to, Aaron. Does that sound good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So halftime shot, and I believe we've been neglecting a very good friend of ours, and this goes out to JoJo. We love you. There was no particular order to this, so do not feel slighted. We love you. We'll give you a hug the next chance we get to see you. She is awesome, and again,
absolutely awesome.
No shit.
Takes good care of us, and takes care. Her boyfriend has a great ass. So there you go.
Well, he's got no ass, but anyway. Sláinte, everybody. Sláinte. Hope you're doing well on a Wednesday.
Oh, I went a little different tonight, man.
Woo.
That rye.
Oh, don't do shots of rye.
Yummy.
So yeah, absolutely. I think it comes from a long history of viewing Black people as sort of subhuman, as beasts. It's still used. I don't think every time somebody, you see Marshawn Lynch run for a 60-yard touchdown and shrug off everybody in the stadium, you go, man, that's a beast. I don't know that you're necessarily making a racist comment, but it does come from a place of viewing them on a different level. I mean, let's face it, they were chosen to work because there was a belief that they were physically superior. So yeah, I definitely think there's a belief of retaliation. You posted the video, and then I posted it, of the woman who eloquently, while losing her shit on all of white America, pointed out how this contract has been broken so many times. And that, to paraphrase, we are lucky all they're asking for is equality and not revenge. That's where it comes from. Yes. Yeah. The white man does fear retaliation for the sins of their past. And I don't think current white men should, if they don't behave in a way that harkens back to a past. If you treat Black people with respect, I would imagine that you shouldn't feel threatened by them in return. I think the real issue is a lot of white dudes got one Black friend, and that guy appeases them, assuages their ego because of the numbers in the room. So
let me speak to that real quick, Aaron, because boy, that struck a chord, friend. Like, I sat back on that one. That is I mean, that's real, and I've seen that. And honestly, it's interesting for a kid like myself, just now realizing who he is, as far as recognizing his blackness and stepping into it and being proud of it. I was raised, I mean, with all the dad, Curtis Mayfield, we the people who are darker than blue, and James Brown, I'm black and I'm proud, and all of those things my father and my mother tried to instill in me. But the problem is that you live so much in a culture that from the very beginning, like you said, says that you are this menacing entity that is very, very you. And so therefore you need to control this person or these people, because if you don't, then they're basically their brain state is just going to take over, and they're going to be on survival mode. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to attack, they're going to cause mayhem and chaos. That's real, man, because when you're the only black man and you don't have the tools, or you don't have the confidence to stand and to say, you know what, I don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear that. And are just trying to fight it, because this is a point that I had to come to, Aaron, and we've talked about this in depth. I had to come to the point to where I was okay with losing that extra weight as far as people who I considered to be friends. I had to be okay with that, because in order to truly step into who I am and step into my blackness and love who I am, I had to leave behind those people who, quite frankly, didn't want to see me as a black man, but wanted to see me as an oddity, as something that could, kind of put on their shelf to display. Like you said, they would say, hey, I do have a black friend. No, I'm so much more than that. Mm-hmm. And if that's all you see, then our to end here. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to. We're both like kind of going off on tangent, but man, it just really hit me. It hit me hard.
Well, and that's that's the kind of shit we do in the bar. When the thought hits, you follow it down. I won't say I'm not trying to change minds with some of what I'm saying, but I also recognize that really requires a much more one-on-one, intimate kind of thing. I hope occasionally I say something that rattles the doors of the mind a little bit, mm-hmm. and makes somebody want to go Google it a little bit more and get some info.
Right.
And then come back and have that further convo. It doesn't happen all at once. We were talking, there's been a lot of articles about why this moment. We watched Rodney King. We've watched so many events over these years. We've watched Philando Castillo. We've watched Sandra Bland. We so many times it's been caught on tape. I don't know specifically what it is about this moment. It does seem a convergence of a lot of things. I don't think it's just watching the video, although watching somebody die for the course of 8 minutes and 46 seconds will change a person. But I think there's always been people sympathetic to the cause, but there's definitely a lot more people who feel comfortable speaking the truth about it now.
It feels different, doesn't it? It just feels different.
It does. And, I compared to, I think it's coincidental, but also apropos to make this comparison. People knew gay people deserved similar treatment and fairness for mm-hmm. years and years and years. And in my own lifetime, in our lifetime, we have witnessed a movement go from being considered in the shadows, do not speak of them, and only spoken of in terms relative to HIV and AIDS and the fact that they're sickness and all this stuff, to really, up until very recently, for whatever particular reason, which don't even get me started on that, but until very recently, has been accepted at a much higher level. And it was interesting to watch in the very last week. I find this interesting that in the last week, we had an administration try to take away rights from the LGBTQ community, specifically for healthcare related type things. They could be refused treatment. Within days, you've got to admit, conservative Supreme Court said, nah.
Hey, kudos to Gorsuch.
Kudos. But now today, they're doubling down on it. they've announced that part of the party platform will be to speak out against same-sex marriage and to promote conversion therapy. So it's a backslide. But what my comparison is, as much as progressive and enlightened people want it all to happen at once, and of course, Black people and gay Black people and Black trans lives, you want it to happen all at once. You're like, wait a second, I don't need this to happen in increments. I need to be recognized as a human being now. The reality is that that's not how culture works. It's not how society works, and it's not how government works. Government is always the slowest to take it up. But what we have seen is the free market. The free market's been huge in championing the LGBTQ cause. And right now, and this ties in with a question from a week ago, there's a lot of corporate activism going on. You've got a lot of companies that are finally saying, nah, we're gonna put our money where our mouth is. We recognize that the Black community is a huge supporter of us, and it's our turn to pay that back. And whether it's a little performative, whether it's a little bit of PR, I kind of don't care, because it's the free market saying you're going to change, and they're changing to it.
And Aaron, to build off of your example, dude, I mean, that's a perfect example. But even just in a smaller or greater sense, and I want to read a statement that Kim made after I make this point. And the fact is, look at seatbelts. Right? I mean, all of us are like, when we were growing up, I mean, hell, I was laying in the back of the hatchback while mom and dad were driving down the road. I'm like, I don't care. That's awesome. Great. But you look at what's happened as a society when you have, MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, forming, and then going and campaigning and saying we're losing our sons and daughters. And then all of a sudden people started waking up and saying, yeah, you know what, this is a good thing. The amount of deaths that we have from drunk driving compared to the 1960s, 50s, it just, it's minuscule compared to the numbers that we had before. And that's because we made a cultural shift in America.
We talked about it.
And the fact is, we talked about it, and we have the capacity, I believe, we have the capacity as a country, as Americans, to totally make that shift, to be able to talk about it finally. You know what, look, instead of giving us a, hey, we're sorry, but, hey, we're sorry about slavery, but let's try this first wave of mass incarceration on you and see how that works. Oh, we're sorry about that. Let's try Jim Crow and see what that does to you. Oh, we're sorry about Jim Crow, but let's try redlining. And it just keeps going. America is the land of giving apologies and adding a but to the end of it. And the fact is that until we get to the point where we say, as a country, this is horrible, this is terrible, and we are not going to stand for it anymore, until we get to that point, and until we reach that critical mass, because Aaron, I'm going to be quite honest with you, and I'm speaking seriously from my point of view, but I gotta believe that there are more Black people than not. Way, I still am waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop as far as, this wave of awesomeness that's happening in our country losing momentum, and people starting to get, complacent and saying, okay, well, we did a good thing. Okay, we raised awareness. That's good enough. I'm like, no, it's not good enough. We worked so hard as a people to try and get equality all the way back, from the time the Constitution was written, because the Constitution wasn't written for me. I've said that before, and we can go into a whole episode, but it wasn't written for me. And so James Baldwin put it so eloquently. He said, you know what? Here's what Black people want. We literally want the thing you do. We want to be left alone.
Yeah.
We want to be left alone to chase the American dream. We want to be left alone to raise our children peacefully. We want to be left alone to provide for our families. That's all we don't want anything from white people. And I think that's at the core of what you were talking about, Aaron. That's at the heart of what a lot of white people are scared of, is that we are wanting to take something away from them, when actually all we're wanting to do is to share
Mm-hmm.
We just want just share, because there's enough to go around.
It's not pie.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
It's not pie. Rights are a universal thing, and you either believe that they exist or you don't. There's really not another way of looking at that. You can't be like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess there are people, but
right.
And that's what we've done. We've hedged that bet for a long, long time. You know, you mentioned, you know, how do we sustain it? And I think the way it sustains is because there are now so many people who view it as something that, you know, they can talk about. And
Yep.
again, I think a lot of that responsibility falls on the shoulder of white people who, when confronted with somebody who's like, oh, it's been 20 days. Why are they still protesting? Well, because it's been 400 years, Karen.
Karen. Yes.
It's been 400 fucking years, and they still have been denied the very first promise made to free black people was 40 acres and a mule, and it was rescinded within a week. So the apology has rung false from the very first one. But how do you sustain it? You have a mass movement of people who have heretofore thought, I'd rather stay quiet.
Yeah.
And when people if somebody doesn't know what silence is violence is, what that phrase means, it means that your silence is complicity. You're not personally harming somebody, but you're also not helping somebody.
Exactly.
And Elie Wiesel said, anybody who refuses to speak out is in support of the oppressor.
So, man,
and we have to do more. But to give us a nice little segue here.
Yeah.
I think I have 2 points. One, it was something that Chappelle said in his most recent thing, 846. And by the way, if you go to watch that and think you're going to have a belly laugh, you're not. He's going to drop some serious knowledge on your ass.
Right in your face, man.
But if you're a Chappelle fan, then you ought to expect every once in a while for him to bring the real, because that's what he does.
Yeah.
But he said, you know, it was sort of in response to, I think, Don Lemon calling out celebrities and needing to say more. And he said, nah, man, the streets are talking right now. The streets are telling you that this is happening. And it's happening now in the same week as Juneteenth, the celebration of slavery being formally fully ended in Texas on June 19th. And
which is still kind of fucked up because it ended earlier and the people in Texas only found out about it a couple of months later. Like,
well,
that's kind of fucked up. And I know
there's always war. And every war supposedly ends on this particular day, but people are still getting shot up after that. But yeah, you're right. But they chose this day, and it should be a national holiday. We should revere it. It's been interesting to see a lot of companies say they're going to give their employees the day off for it. So.
Yep.
Awesome. But I got to be honest, it's something I personally did not know about until the last few years. And I've studied up on it, but I also, other than saying, yeah, I think slavery was a fucking terrible idea and I'm glad it's over. How do you celebrate Juneteenth, Evan?
I'm glad you asked that, because I make a mean red velvet cake, my friend, and I really may bring you down a hunk of it. Notice I said a hunk of it tomorrow, whenever my daughter and I bake it. Red velvet, anything red. Okay. Red is the color that we use to celebrate Juneteenth.
All right.
But really, man, here's the thing. Juneteenth is one of those things that is celebrated with family and friends, man. I mean, you just get together and you celebrate the fact that you're alive. You celebrate the fact that you have a chance to be free, to walk around and be free to do whatever you want to do. So Juneteenth is one where it is in a sense, in a historical sense, because that's what I said, as far as, word finally got to Texas. Yeah, that kind of sucks. But when word finally got there, I can't imagine, the feeling that embraced those who were enslaved were there. So the way you celebrate Juneteenth is really up to you. What I would do is just, man, look around. I mean, I know they're here up north. They're having a celebration on Sunday, which my daughter and I fully plan on going and walking around. They're going to have, Black-owned businesses. They're going to have food. Best way to experience a culture, guys, is through food.
Hell yeah.
Please try some food that you don't know. And like I said, there's your, the typical red velvet cake, the red drinks, whatever you got, man. Just embrace it and just be like, you know what? I am part of this celebration. So there you go. I wanted to read some things real quick.
Yeah.
John, if you could give clarity to this, that'd be great. John said you dress for the job you intend to do. And I think what that meant was I don't want to put words in your mouth, John. So if you just come back and just say yes, I think he was talking about, kind of going back to the militarization of the police. I totally agree with that. Kim says absolutely.
I'm going to interpret it the same way too. I know John. Yep. We go way back. Played soccer together. He's awesome. I believe he's a nurse now. So very props good. To you on the front line of this whole thing. John. And I'm going to assume that's what he meant too. And that it does dictate your mindset for that.
Absolutely. I think you said it last week, man. You said, if you're used to having a hammer to get, everything's going to look like nails. Mm-hmm. And that's a beautiful thing. Kim says this. She says, absolutely, Evan. And John says yes, referring to the. Okay, so thanks, John, for clearing that up. Appreciate it. Kim says, absolutely, Evan. I've experienced the same thing. It wasn't until I left small town Ohio that I really was comfortable with who I was, and I had to let a lot of people go because they weren't necessarily racist, but they weren't anti-racism and willing to speak up when they saw it. By the way, Kim is my cousin. So thanks for watching, Kim. Appreciate that. Taylor finally got here. She says, oh, no, I'm late to the party. But we have a few minutes, Taylor, if you want to give one of your, 12-part questions. We're willing to listen. John says Fisher's cops should be wearing khakis and windbreakers. Yes. 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 John, you're my new friend now, my friend. That's awesome.
We bring the world together, Evan.
We bring the world together. That's a beautiful thing. So, and I'm excited about this. Hey, Aaron, I'm so excited because I don't think I'm about to blow your mind, but I'm going to make you think tonight, brother. All right. So it's a two-part question. Two-part question.
All right, Taylor.
You are president of the United States. Mm-hmm. I am vice president. Mm-hmm. First thing you do when you set foot in office, and what is the first objective that you would like me to chase?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. I like Gordon Kate. I like that.
I think this is a good ticket. I think think we're spending an awful lot of time talking about things I did 20 years ago, but I think it's a good ticket. I think it's a smart ticket. And I think it's a lot more representative than people who may think we're like super far lefties would really realize. I need clarification on the first part. When you say, what's the first thing I do when I got into the Oval Office? Do you mean that on a like policy level, or can I be like burn one and
no, I don't care. No, whatever.
Shots.
First thing you do. First.
I think we have a round. I think we definitely have a round.
Here we go.
I definitely think we would do some shots because we'd be like, yeah, got the Oval Office.
Nice.
But truly, the first thing I would do is hopefully what any smart president would do, which is gather the smartest effing people for the things that they specifically need to do.
So Taylor's Secretary of State, is that it?
Don't just take a smart friend and put him in charge of FEMA. The guy who was the guy who was in charge of
or a brain surgeon.
The Tennessee Walking Horse Association is probably good at his job. That doesn't make him good at FEMA. And, your son-in-law, just because he has a law degree, doesn't necessarily deserve to be in your cabinet. I digress. Yeah, I would surround myself with the smartest people in every field that I possibly knew, and then I would ask them who are the smartest people they know, and then begin getting the best information I could. What would I ask you to do? I'd ask you what you wanted to do and what you thought you could benefit the most, because I don't think it would serve any purpose for me to do like, hey, Evan, go deal with the black folks. I'd be like, how do you want to make a difference?
Okay,
right?
honestly, I would go deal with the black folks. I mean, that's what I want to do. I'm like, look, Aaron, look, I'm vice president. So how you feel about them reparations, man? I'm just, let's talk about that.
That gives me an opportunity. Little quick side here. I think reparations need to happen, but I don't think. I think it's one of those things that it's a conversation, and reparations doesn't necessarily mean that every descendant of a slave in the country gets a check for $1,000 like it's the unemployment kind of thing that we've been doing. Hey, everybody gets $600 back. I think reparations is a federal acknowledgement of its original sin and its failure to live up to its promise, to saying, now that we recognize you as a citizen of the United States, that we're going to afford you the same opportunities and benefits that everybody gets, and making that a decree. Probably be nice to build a cool ass monument with like a flame or something on it. I don't know. And then make it a point as a government to say that in addition to all these other things that we do, we are going to focus on trying to repair these communities that we have harmed. And in reparations, I would include what we've done to Native Americans as well.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve reparations. I freely admit that history was a different time, and we came to what would become the United States in a different worldview and fighting and all that. But the fact remains, we displaced an indigenous people for the sake of ourselves, and then we displaced another indigenous people to bring them here to work for us. And my takeaway from that is white folks are just lazy, as far as I can
tell. And we can talk more about this next week, man, but I'm with you on the reparations thing. I think that number one, I think we need to look at, and this is just me, I think that we should look at, if we're serious about what is the one way of dispersing and passing down wealth among the middle class in America, it's real estate.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
It's a home.
And it's what's been denied Black America for the longest time. Anytime Black wealth has been accumulated, it's been taken away. Oh no. It seems like we always hit like 50 minutes and one of us freezes up. Am I going to have to riff? Which one? Here's the best question. Which one of us is actually frozen? Because both of us think we're not. I guarantee it. Are you going to come back to me, Evan? Well, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm sure he's doing the same, because neither one of us has a clue who's actually live right now. So appreciate everybody tuning in. I love having these conversations. This is totally what we do when we're at the bar and just having a great time. And I love having these conversations. I love that people have been getting involved and sending in questions and comments and interacting with us. And hopefully we can all do this in person real soon, real soon, because it's even better when we're all hanging out and slapping backs and hopefully hugging and telling each other we love each other, because that's exactly how we get all through this. So cheers to you all. Appreciate your time again. We'll be back next week, because this is what we do. Take care.